I'd like to acknowledge our past presidents of the Chamber of Commerce that are in the room today. We have past President Lucy Marco, Kevin Davis, Jim DeNovo, and Rick Stern. We also have current board members, Joy O'Donnell, Vice President Paul Basanti, and Mike Yerrick. And our councillor, Dan McCurry, who is our liaison with the City of Brantford. So, welcome. Thank you for attending. As I mentioned earlier, Enbridge Gas is our premier sponsor for today, and they are one of our community's largest employers and a very big supporter of the Chamber of Commerce, which we always appreciate. They have been Chamber members since January 1911, and they are past Business Excellence Award recipients for Company of the Year in 1992. Today's luncheon is possible because of their generous support. It is my pleasure to now introduce Murray Costello, who's Director, Southeast Region Operations, Enbridge Gas, who will be bringing greetings from Enbridge and on behalf of Enbridge. A little bit of history on Murray, first of all. He has been with Enbridge for 35 years, and during this time he's held various leadership positions of increasing responsibility throughout the company, including distribution operations, engineering and supply, and supply chain management. In his current role, he's the senior leader of the Southeast region, which stretches from Waterloo to Wyerton to Tillsonburg to Oakville, and serves 670,000 customers. And he's accountable for 3 primary areas of work. These include the safe and reliable construction, operation, and maintenance of natural distribution system, community relations and franchise retention, and overall employee relations. When Murray's not working, he enjoys cycling and numerous activities with his family, including skiing, boating, hiking. So please, without further ado, please welcome Murray.
Thank you, Ken, for that introduction. I think that's the longest introduction that I've had in my career, but thank you very much. I appreciate that. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce, Brantford-Brant, and the Chamber membership for the opportunity to address the 17th Annual Mayor's Luncheon. I'd also like to welcome Mayor Davis and all the invited guests. It is great to see people. It is great to be out. For myself, it's the first time in about a year and a half to actually be out in a community setting as opposed to sitting there in my office and talking into a computer. So nice to see everybody. I know that many of you know us as Union Gas, and it's been over 2 years now since Enbridge Gas and Union Gas came together. I want you to know that we're still the same people working locally here in Brantford and the County of Brant with the same focus on the safe delivery of reliable and affordable energy. Very fortunate to have a table of my colleagues here today. I won't introduce all of them, but I do want to introduce one of them, which is Al Dusling. He's our local operations leader, and he's a member of the Brantford-Brant Emergency Operations Committee. So Al, thanks for joining me. I have no doubt that the current pandemic is towards the top of everybody's issues list. The pandemic is arguably the greatest collective challenge we've faced in recent memories. It has impacted every facet of society, from our economy to our social lives and our health. My message to you is that Enbridge is here to help. We're here to provide an affordable and reliable energy choice to over 35,000 customers. So if we look at Brantford, we have 35,000 customers, and we include in Brant County, we have 12,000. Over the past year and a half with the pandemic, we worked very hard to have the proper safety protocols to continue to be able to provide our services. Also reaching out to people that have had challenges paying their bills and working closely with them. I know that another thing that's going to be top of mind is climate change, so I just want to share a few words with you about our thoughts on the energy transition and how we move to a lower carbon future. And first, I just thought I'd put some context around it. I don't think people fully appreciate that natural gas actually accounts for 30% of the energy that's used across Ontario. And to replace that infrastructure, it's just not feasible in the short term. In fact, when we take a look at it, it would be 16 nuclear plants to replace the energy on peak days. In addition, if we look at it, Ontario does have a very reliable electricity grid today, and natural gas is part of that mix. I'd also like to offer a couple of other ways that we're helping to decarbonize our gas system. And the first way is around renewable natural gas. And so sometimes we think about renewable energy and we think of wind and solar, but carbon neutral, renewable natural gas, or RNG, which is recaptured methane from landfills, organics, wastewater, and farms that would otherwise be released into the air, is displacing traditional natural gas, which does reduce the overall emissions. In addition to heating, RNG is being used today as a zero carbon transportation fuel for municipal fleets. So if we go close by, if we think of Hamilton, if we go to Toronto, and that's really important because if you take a look at it, in Ontario, the largest emitter is actually our transportation sector. So whatever we can do to help on that transportation sector does make a huge difference. The City of Toronto is currently powering a considerable portion of their refuse truck fleet with the very same organic waste that the trucks pick up at residents and business doors in partnership with Enbridge. If I go down around and if I go to the Niagara region, we've teamed up with Walker Industries and Comcor Environmental to build Ontario's largest renewable natural gas plant there. So if I look at it, RNG does have the potential, and kind of roughly looking at it, in probably at the top end, could probably replace probably about a third of our annual usage in the long run. Another exciting area of development is hydrogen. Hydrogen can be generated in several ways. Then we can inject it into our natural gas system, again, lowering the carbon. And actually today we've just started up in Markham, Ontario. We actually got a pilot project going with 3,000 customers. We're injecting hydrogen into our current natural gas system. So that's an exciting thing for us. Enbridge is also advancing plans in the zero-emission geothermal and solar sectors with projects and plans and developments. I'd also like to touch on, and finally, as the local business community residents continue to manage costs from the pandemic, I want to make sure that you're all aware that Enbridge Gas has a number of conservation programs. We've had them over the years and we continue to have them. And so if I just take a look at locally, we do have a home efficiency rebate program, which offers up to $5,000 in rebates to homeowners to retrofit their homes. And if I just look at it in our community here over the last 6 years, we've actually had, which is a good story, we've actually had 1,400 homes in this area take up that program. A very similar program for lower income customers, and it's just a slightly different title. But if I look at that over the last 6 years, we've had 400 homes that have taken up a participation in that program. And if I turn my attention just to the business community for a second, we've had, I think it's around 820 prescriptive conservation measures and custom conservation projects that we've worked with local businesses. And if we just to put a number around what those savings have been, it's really nearly 14 million cubic meters of gas consumption that's been decreased. So it's savings back to individual businesses and homeowners, and it does decrease emissions. So if you do have a chance, I would encourage you to take a look at enbridge.com. It's our website, does have a ton of good information there, but if you're interested on any more information on our programs, it's captured there. In closing, I just want to reiterate that Enbridge Gas is here to help you lower your emissions and lower your energy costs. Please reach out to us if you'd like to learn more. Please enjoy the remarks from Mayor Bailey, who I understand is going to join us shortly, and Mayor Davis. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it back to Ken.
Thank you very much, Murray, and thank you, Enbridge. Now, the reason why we're all here today is to talk with Mayor David Bailey and Mayor Kevin Davis. Thank you for joining us and for your leadership during this unique and hopefully once-in-a-lifetime global challenge. Let's get started with some questions, and we're going to start with how the pandemic recovery is being addressed by your councils. And I'm just going to sit over here. Give me a moment. Is this one working? Perfect. So I'm going to start this time around. I'm going to start with Mayor Davis first.
Yep.
How will the COVID pandemic recovery efforts impact the financial plans of the municipalities for 2022? And what are the opportunities, challenges, and measures that might be permanent tools to enshrine more efficiencies in your municipal operations? Mayor Bailey.
We're going to start with Mayor Bailey.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
let's start with
if
Mayor Bailey. Sorry.
you want to go ahead, Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Well, when you said you were going to start with Mayor Davis,
I apologize.
It was confusing to Mayor Bailey. Anyway, I will begin if you like, Kevin, or you can start whatever you like.
I'm happy to start if you don't.
Perfect.
And one thing I might ask, please, Ken, if mayor's only as good as the team behind him. We got a great team. A lot of them are here today. And I'd just like, if I can just have a minute to thank them for being here today. We've got all the general managers. We have Interjet Hans, stand up, Indy. We've got Heidi DeVries for legal. We have Marlene Miranda, social services. We have other directors that are here, Mary Vizaki, communications, Kevin Finney, economic development, Joel, who is our treasurer, and of course, Chief Todd Binkley, our fire chief. And we also have Brian Hutchings, our great city CEO. And this team has led us through the COVID pandemic. And I think they all deserve a great hand. They've done a fantastic job. And of course, my council mates, Councillor McCreary, who is the chamber rep, and of course, Councillor Martin. Councillor Martin's here as well. So thanks very much. And thank you, Ken, for letting me do that. Lastly, I just wanted to thank very much the chamber, Ken, and you've done a great job through the pandemic helping us. From sitting on mayor's task forces to the rapid testing initiative. And also many of your members have been on the front line of this COVID pandemic, dealing with the implementations of rules and regulations throughout it. And I thank you, Ken, your board, your staff, and all your members for everything you've done for our community and the business community in particular through the pandemic. So thanks for letting me do that. I appreciate it. So has the pandemic affected our budget? Absolutely. And it continues to affect it in really three ways. And the main way it affects our city budget is through revenues. For example, transit. The use of transit is not what it was. It's coming back slowly. There's a huge loss of revenue there. Then there's things like user fees at rec centers, that sort of thing. And then also we have expenses that continue. And those expenses are driven by things like PPE for staff. We must keep staff safe. Things like having in place, say at rec centers, you've got to have somebody there checking for vaccination qualifications. That takes money because you now have more staff and you need more staff. But so what opportunities have there been? First of all, I'd say the provincial and federal governments have been great. They've given us a lot of money, all municipalities across the country, and in particular Ontario. It's helped us deal with a lot of those expenses. We hope it continues. In terms of the question, Ken, is, so what are the opportunities? Because every crisis has within it opportunity. And for us, there were two opportunities that deal with costs. One is the new city hall. Two things there. We had the opportunity, if we moved into the new city hall, to adapt to COVID and what it's done to the workforce, work from home. And now we've done that. We're going to do it permanently. About 30% of the workforce will be working from home. It's amazing. Improved productivity, absenteeism improved, but also we've become more attractive to younger people to work for the city. They want that option. Plus, it saved us $22 million in our capital budget. We're not going to have to do Old City Hall for social services, and it's saving us about $1.2 million in operating costs each year. The other thing about that City Hall is all the departments under one roof for the first time in 25 years, and it's amazing to see. It's happening now. Departments working more collaboratively and cooperatively. Not that they weren't before, but it's a catalyst for it when you're all under the same roof. And you know what I'm talking about, that back and forth. The other thing is, so what is it we're looking for from, what else have we done to maintain efficiencies? Well, the KPMG report, Ken, 130 recommendations to reduce costs. We've implemented about 30% of those. We hope by the end of 2022, about 70% of that. So we continue to work on efficiencies. And the last thing that's happened that's helped us, not necessarily COVID related, is the merger of our Hydro Corp, owned by the city, with the one owned by the City of Cambridge and North Dumfries. It's going to generate greater revenues for the city shareholder, and that's going to help the taxpayer, and also better service, a more diverse service. So probably I hit the 3 minutes, I think. And I apologize, I like to give answers that mean something. Sometimes I go on too long, but feel free to cut me off.
Thank you very much. Mayor Bailey.
Okay, I can't hear you very well. I could hear you at the beginning and now I can't hear
Sorry
you
about,
very well.
sorry
As
about
long-
that.
As long as you can hear me. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to my staff too, here at the county and my council. Obviously, we have a very efficient, very effective council. I believe that only Councillor Gatward is on the line today, and we don't have a table. We have staff that are coming in virtually, as I am. And I said way back when you were planning this event that I couldn't be there in person if we weren't meeting yet at committee level and or at council. I didn't think that I could go against my messaging, which I do every morning, that says I'm not going to meet until my council can meet, until my committees can meet. So I'm sorry that we have to do it this way, but it's what I said I was going to do right from the beginning for those of you that expected me to be there in the big wing chair next to Kevin. But anyway, back to the question. We are okay. I don't think we're going to have a lot of significant changes for 2022. We have been given enough money by the province and we were able to put it in our reserves. And our services have we've been able to continue with all of our services. The only thing that's kind of negative about the whole thing, financially it's okay, is staff. Staff have had to step away from their positions that they were hired for, that they really love, that they planned on doing for every day till they retired, because a lot of people do retire from the county. And they've been put different places. So our staff are doing anything we ask them to do for the betterment of the County of Brant. And that's kind of sad on a bad day, just because everyone's so tired and COVID has taken so much out of us emotionally and physically and mentally. And we have different staff issues that we have to work through. And when I say staff issues, just it's been a lot of stress. A lot of our employees come from out of the county and a lot of driving, a lot of time. And so we're going to have to work on those, I guess, going into 2022, because these things are going to continue for a little while. But financially, we're in very good shape. As I said, the province was very good to us, and we were able to leave them in our reserves, and we can take them out when we need them for whatever programming that we may have had to suspend just because of the COVID testing. And now the passports, our arenas are not being used as much as they could have because people are refusing to get vaccinated. So they're not letting their kids come into the arenas, which is something that we didn't realize we would have to deal with at such an immense rate. So I think some bad decision making here in the county, but something that will sort itself out, I'm sure. So other than that, we have a lot of staff also that are going to be working from home permanently. I would think it's working out very well. They seem to like it. I think there's something they're missing from not being able to see other employees on a day-to-day basis. I'm a bit of a social guy, and I would rather see people than do it the way we're doing it even today. I know that the room is full of people I know and I haven't seen for a very long time, and I'm fairly bothered by that. So anyway, that's the situation in the County of Brant as far as economic recovery for 2022.
Thank you very much. And I know we all appreciate your position and reluctance to come today in person. So number two, and this time I will start with you, Mayor Bailey. The Chamber of Commerce supports a more fiscally resilient municipal budgeting process, including property tax predictability and fairness. The province recently introduced a small business tax rebate class and provincial advocacy efforts, including reconsidering the highest and best use approach to property tax assessments, among other tools. What opportunities do you see to improve the municipal funding model, and what areas can the Chamber assist in advocating to the province on behalf of your municipality?
Thank you for the question. First of all, it's the improvements of the property tax amendments were a long time coming, and they need to come. They should have come before now, but the pandemic again has brought a lot of things that were sort of lingering and been put on the back burner to the front burner. So that's good. So I think that the county has to work with small business, and maybe not off the assessment of the properties, but off the possible totals of what the earnings can be. So we have to figure out what any small business is capable of earning, And I think we have to just turn the whole system backwards and start with the people that are trying to run the small business instead of worrying about putting a set cost together for hydro and rent and all of that kind of stuff, and figure out that you've got to make $3,500 before you've really made a cent. And that's an awful lot of chocolate bars or shoes or anything that you're trying to start as a small business. It's a lot of product. It's a lot of work before you even hit zero. So I think we've got to turn that around and figure out the tax base for small business. And I think that we're just doing it backwards. We have to work with everyone. We have an incredible economic development department here in the county, headed by Russell Press, who's magic and has done a lot of incredible things for the County of Brant. And I think we have to get those people working with our staff right off the bat to sort of talk in reality and not talk so generally, and not try to fill storefronts and not try to fill empty buildings just because we think we should, because we shouldn't. We shouldn't fill buildings to have someone fail. So I think that we need to go right back to square one, to the basics, and adjust our tax system to the appropriate structure of who's trying to make a living selling what.
Thank you. Mayor Davis.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. There's a lot there. In terms of property taxes generally, we don't do property tax assessments. That's the province. But what we want to do is create more predictability for city and businesses. And we'll be moving, this is one of the priorities of this council, helping the next council, is to establish a multi-year budgeting. Like right now we do it once a year. And the goal is to create budgets that go out 2, 3, 4 years so that there'll be more predictability for everyone, including taxpayers. In terms of user fees, they're a big part of every municipal budget because they're an important source of revenue. All we have really are government grants and property taxes, and then we have user fees. And so yes, there's a different way of looking at user fees. To simply charge what the market will permit for the service. That's kind of a demand-based approach, like most businesses do. But also, what do you just simply charge to break even, to meet the cost of providing that service? It's a great challenge, depends on the service you're providing and what the approach should be. And I want to thank, I mentioned the team staff, the team council, a great team, Councillor McCreary, Councillor Martin. They've been pushing for a user fee task force. We've set it up. They're going to be looking at that. What can we do to improve our user fees, which is very important for businesses. In terms of what can we ask, what can we need the assistance of the Chamber in advocating higher levels of government? One would be continuing that funding that Mayor Bailey talked about and I did, that we've got this past year, the year before, for transit, for making up the revenue losses and hits that we've been taking. Hopefully the federal government will continue that. Also, we're seeing cannabis retail. We bear a lot of the costs that come out of cannabis retail stores. I'm talking about police enforcement, I'm talking about other issues. We bear the cost, but we don't see any of the revenue. It'd really be great to see the federal and provincial governments flow some of that revenue to us, in particular for some of our policing costs. Obviously, there's always a need for infrastructure funding. The other part of that question, Ken, was the small business tax class. So what that's about is there are tax classes, right? And that determines basically how much you pay in taxes, and there's rates on it. But the province has said to us, you can create a new class called the small business class, and you can set a different rate for that. There hasn't been a municipality yet in Ontario that's taken that up. Ottawa's looking at it, and they're putting some time and energy into it. We're watching what they're doing because they have more resources than we do to analyze the issue. But the problem is the legislation of the province isn't very specific about how you set it up. And of course, there's always that issue when you're setting up new tax classes. If you're setting up a tax class that helps one group of taxpayers pay less tax, someone else has to pick up the slack. And that's always the impact when you're moving, creating tax classes for property tax, because the city has to raise the same amount of money every year based on your budget. And the tax class as an assessment just determines who pays what of that big number. So looking at it, I think it's exciting we can do it, and you can do it maybe there's some objectives you want to do or achieve through it, like maybe small business in the downtown, that sort of thing. So I think it's something the next council will have to deal with. We're trying to set the groundwork for that in terms of the information that can be used. But meanwhile, the city does continue, based on lobbying done by the chamber, to bring the tax ratio, you know what I'm talking about, Ken, that 1.5, which is how business and commercial taxes are based on residential rates. But anyways, continue to reduce that, and that continues.
Thank you very much. The signature policy topic for the chamber locally, and has been since 1886, is transportation priorities in our region. Most recently, the chamber has been focused on improving access to the 403 and GO Transit. As our region rebounds, what infrastructure projects are the city and county working together on to facilitate efficient transportation networks for our workforce and our industry? Mayor Davis.
Yeah, so this is being driven kind of a lot of different factors, but the first thing is you got to know what you need. And that's really based on your official plan. And your official plan, part of that process is you're analyzing your transportation needs of your community. We've done that. We're just finishing it off because the province required us to go out from 2041 to 2051. So we're finalizing that master plan. The county, of course, they're going through the same process, official plan review. So the opportunity is going to come very quickly once we each better understand our own traffic needs and issues, to really grab hold of this issue of planning regional, because some of the road systems are regional and they serve our entire region. And I'm very optimistic that with the work that's being done at the staff level right now, in terms of other services we provide jointly that were like housing and social services, there's a lot of negotiating going on about that to work better on that. And soon that same conversation will likely move into transportation, because they're clearly, it's not just, I see it as, it's a great opportunity to establish a better linkage with Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge. We already have a lot of linkages, post-secondary education. Now our power companies are merged. They're in the Grand River, we're in the Grand River, we have many of the same issues. We don't really have a really good inter-region transportation system from Simcoe right through to Kitchener. I know that it's a real concern for the county as well, so I'm hoping, my ambition is, as we look at what is the regional needs of the city and the county and how we can best help one another in that issue, how can we also aspire to have that as a key piece of a transportation network that works better north-south than east-west. In terms of specifics coming up, we do have some specific projects planned that will basically center around the Wayne Gretzky Parkway, expanding it. We're across the 403, designing it so that it will meet the easterly needs of the boundary lands. That's how you'll get up into the easterly portion of boundary lands beyond Powerline Road. And then also Veterans Memorial Parkway, twinning that and improving the Veterans Memorial Parkway and Clarence Street. There is the big challenge, of course, of the westerly portion of our city and how we best meet the transportation needs of that part of our city. And we did the Oak Park Road environmental assessment. We put that on hold because we realized we've got to look at some other options. And so that process is continuing. And yes, that will involve discussions with the county. If I might just say one last thing about, if I might be so bold to talk about the county and the city. You know, we've had a difficult relationship in the past at times, and it's because many times what we tried to do is you win, I lose, or I'm going to win and you're going to lose. And I really think that as the county has changed and as we've changed, the county is more of an urban municipality now than it was. There is the opportunity for us to move past our past and create a more collaborative and cooperative relationship where we each meet the needs each has by our own resources. For example, in terms of resources like sewer and garbage and some road systems, where we can help the county. And so I'm hoping that the text and tone of what we do, not so much this council, the next council, will be really more positive and creating win-win, you win, I win, things that will mutually benefit us and the entire region, because we're so connected, and let's strengthen those connections. So I think that's it.
Thank you, Mayor Davis. Mayor Bailey.
Well, that was very nice, and it was nice to hear that, Mayor Davis. And I think the county and the city do some things very well together, joint services. But we have to understand that there are huge differences in the county and the city, and transportation is probably one of the ones that are the most obvious. Since the County of Brant does surround the city proper, all the plans, first of all, there is a transportation study of the county and the city that is in front of staff right now. And because of COVID, it's been delayed. And because of our official plans, which have both been submitted to the province now, we're just in a bit of a hold period. But we do have that on the table right now. Kevin's right. We do have a plan. But what you have to understand is everything about Brantford goes to the county, where at a certain point of living in the far east or the far west or the far north or the far south, where you want to go is not into the city anymore. So if you live in Calvin or Burford, you might be wanting to go to Oxford. You need the transportation to flow easily to Oxford. And when you're in Glen Morris and Harrisburg and St. George, you want it to flow, as Kevin said, toward Cambridge or toward Waterloo. And then when you're in Canesville and all of those places, that way, you want to go to Hamilton. You want to be close to Ancaster, and you support things like the Merritt Hall or Ancaster Horticultural. So when you're doing a transportation plan, you have to be very clear as to where your constituents want to go. Not everyone wants to go downtown Brantford. So there needs to be a consistency to get most of the people that live in places like Paris. Paris people like to go to Cambridge. They've been always going to Cambridge. In fact, when you went to high school, you had a choice between going to Paris or go to Southwood in Cambridge, in Galt, the old Galt, before Cambridge, before amalgamation. And so everyone has everyone has a place to go, and we have to find out what that is before we put a transportation plan in place. It's a little bit different in the county than the city, and I just sort of explained why. We have to find out where people want to go before we can spend the money on setting things up to have a transportation plan that just makes us happy as a county, but doesn't serve or service the people that are trying to keep moving. So this is where you're going to see a few differences in the city and the county. And I think when we go through these questions, you'll see where there's different needs for both. But Kevin's right, we have to cooperate more. We can't always be looking over our shoulder, wondering whether, one is trying to do something. There doesn't always have to be a winner and a loser, and that's very good. And I like the way Kevin put that because it's true. We always feel that if the city does something and seems to have benefited from it, then we had to have lost somehow. And that's not the truth. It's just the way it appears as you read it in the paper and as you see the process. The process of the city and the county are also very, very different. And we'll talk about that maybe in a few questions coming up. But I think we have a good hand on the transportation needs of the county. And I think with the help of the city, we can make that come quicker than people think. So thank you.
Excellent, thank you. In 2020, municipalities updated their official plans to a 2050 planning horizon, including population, employment, and housing unit growth. What are some key priorities and challenges anticipated from this adjustment? What can be done to encourage housing that is affordable against changing neighborhood preferences? What wins have occurred and what headwinds are you facing? And this one's with you again, Mayor Davis, to start.
Okay, so we're talking about the official plan. And you know what, for many people, they might start to nod off. I gotta tell you, I'm so excited about our new official plan that's been in place since early August. And I'll tell you why, because we haven't had a new official plan since the mid-'80s. Actually, when I was on council as a councillor, that's when we last, and that was a long time ago. Like, I didn't have a bald spot, and my hair was totally dark. And so it's 30 years. But why is that important? Because, our official plans in the past have really been focused on like the size of the building, how many stories, how much density, how many units per acre, medium density, low density. I mean, that's all still important. But you know what? Our new official plan has brought into it a real concern and addressing build design. right? What the buildings look like. How do they fit within the existing environment of the city? And also builds and bakes into it more of a drive to sustainability, a real concern about the environment, because much of the boundary lands are very close to very sensitive ecological areas, including aquifers, and building a requirement to address that as a developer moves forward. So what does all that mean? It means instead of just having a bare bones official plan and a follow-up zoning bylaw that just deals with densities, really, we're going to have something coming out of our official plan that's more robust and requires developers, as they submit developments, to think about all these things that often causes NIMBYism, right? And that's how that building is going to fit into the surrounding neighborhood. So we're baking it in for the developers and builders so that right from the get-go, when they're thinking about doing a development, they've got to consider and address it. And then, and the other issue in terms of NIMBYism is when you leave too much open-ended. And so, as I said, we're trying to, in our official plan, deal with a lot of these issues that become almost like institutionalized and part of the process. But then you got to back that up with a zoning bylaw. And you got to move forward with the zoning bylaw real fast, because that's how you then implement your official plan. That's going to be a big challenge for the next council, but we're setting the groundwork for that by doing that analysis right now. The other thing we're doing in terms of housing affordability, we've developed a system that deals with like medium density. So we're talking about now apartments and townhouses, stacked townhouses, where depending on where you're putting it and depending what your rental structure is, you'll receive some, they aren't grants, it's tax savings. Instead of the first year you're paying 100% of your property tax for your building, you pay like 80%. And so that's then phased over 5 to 10 years. And so that's meant to encourage that kind of intensification. But in terms of also just the bottom line in terms of NIMBYism, which is often a problem, is a really good official plan, which you've got, backing up the zoning bylaws so that you're building your development and how you grow at your city fits your city and what's important about your city. So I think we're getting there, and remains to be seen if it works. I sure hope it does, because there's a tremendous demand here for housing, and we have to address it, and in part you address it by building more units. And so a good official plan will help with that.
Thank you. Mayor Bailey.
Well, we too have issues in the county. The change from 2041 to 2051, I thought it was, but 50 is in the question, really helped us a little bit, because we have, I think right now 5,300 houses in the pipe, which puts us over the target for Ontario to grow, the piece that Ontario put on us to be a community to grow. So really it just gave us an extra 10 years. Everything in the pipe right now, when it's completed, will take us beyond the numbers that we're required to be to. So it really didn't matter when they changed the date to us very much. I think what we have to, and again, this is another difference between the city and the county. The city at least can build these affordable housing units or whatever they're going to do, and there is transportation, and they can walk to a grocery store, and they can do this and they can do that because they are a city proper. In the county, there's no sense having affordable housing down Cleaver Road or down Johnson Road or White Swan Road and put somebody in a very affordable place to live. And then what are they going to do when they get there? They can't afford a car. They can't, they can't get to a grocery store. They can afford where they live, but there's nothing more for them. So we have to do more of community. I actually just toured Andrew Neal's company, ANC, and I was very impressed by the small houses, and I think that we can start making small communities on these side roads and then have them serviced by the county. I'm a big fan of trailer parks and trailer park communities, not just because they can be affordable, and not just because the county has lots of land and we could maybe accommodate some sort of a developer there that wanted to have trailers, but it really sparks a community. People that want to live in a trailer, that are used to living in a trailer, they love the lifestyle that comes with that type of living, and I think it's a wonderful way to live. It's a really close Community, I love the way they think. I like the way they take care of themselves. I like the way that their needs are few, but their happiness is obvious. And I think that because we have lots of land, and those are all things that can't happen right now because of the way our bylaws sit. So I think the County of Brant needs to spend more time on developing what people want, and not sort of paint everything with the same brush. I'm afraid trailer parks have gotten a very bad reputation over the years because they weren't managed properly and they weren't managed as a county business or a municipal business, and they need to be reconsidered, I think, in the county, because there are people that really, really want to live that way, and I think it's wonderful, and I think that if we ask people, if we do more public outreach and find out what people really want instead of building things and finding out it's not what they wanted, and even when we're pricing out units of houses for affordable houses, we're so used to what is available through builders, and it's so hard for some people to price things and figure out that not everyone wants a granite countertop and everyone is not concerned about the profile on their kitchen cupboards. They just want things to be basic, and they want to be happy, and they want to be able to afford it and live a good full life. So I think we have to go all the way back to pricing out what it is to make a space that people want, and then making it practical for people to obtain it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So 4 years ago now, in 2017, the Boundary Adjustment Agreement was signed. Where do we as a region stand? It appears there's substantial development along the 403 and Rest Acres Road, and progress is happening in infrastructure development to begin servicing some of the land. What are some key successes successes to highlight so far, and where can we look, or what can we look forward to in 2022? And then, who wants to take this one first?
I will.
Mayor Bailey.
Yeah, I think that the boundary adjustments were first of all put in place to provide the city the lands that they needed to meet the goals of the Greater Golden Horseshoe. So they had enough land to actually do what was expected of them. But other than that, I think the city and the county have got some wonderful hand-holding projects with Canesville and the airport. And I'm very excited because I know there's interest in both those pieces of the county. And they are sort of in the boundary adjustment areas. So the city and the county have got big things, maybe in the next council, maybe not this council, because we've got a lot on our plate right now. But I'm excited about what's going to happen to parts of the county, and that was all the lands that were put up for not for grabs, but for negotiation to help the city and the county both expand and to offer services to people. I also think that our property along the 403, I mean, that is going to be used for big business, jobs. We need to have more jobs. So we need to have AAA grade businesses going up there. And that's just something that makes sense because of the exposure from the highway and the fact that it's far enough away, it's buffered, it's on berms. It can be seen as a wonderful, it's like a Ferrero Rocher. It's a perfect placement for it. And so that's what the county's planning on doing with our access to the 403. I think that's what the city, I won't speak for Kevin, but I think that's sort of what's in the plan for the city too. Our exits are Rest Acres Road and obviously our Bishopsgate Road and then our Pucktown Road. So all right now, because we have such growth in the county, and more specifically the south end of Paris, we've got to get people moving. We've got to get our infrastructure going. And we have met with the Ministry of Transportation. I've met with Minister Mulrooney, and we have a lot of things in place to keep people moving. And that really doesn't concern the city that much. That's more of a county issue, I guess. But that's sort of what the boundary agreements are to me, is that if we honor what we have in place to Canesville and the airport, I think that's a good place to start.
Thank you very much. Mayor Davis.
Yeah, just so you understand what the boundary lands are, they're our future. Because right now, the city in many ways is built out or about to be built out. You think about residential development, the Shellard Lane area, That's where most of the new housing for young families is going, and it'll be built out in likely 2, 3, 4 years. There really isn't much else left in the city for residential development. There's some area off the Hardy Road that's being developed. Should be about 400 housing units in there. And we're running out of industrial land. So that's why past councils moved forward and did the negotiations with the county. So where those lands, they're those lands that are north of Power Line Road, running from about the old schoolhouse area in the west, right down to Pate Farm in the east. And then there are some lands down at Tula Heights as well. And so those lands are our future. That is where the jobs of the future will be. That is where the homes of the future for the future growth of this community. And if we don't do that, then you think the cost of housing's gone up fast already. Wait till you've constricted supply in your city, so you're not adding anything more. And basic laws of supply and demand says housing prices will go up that much faster, making it more unaffordable for young families. So with those lands, what are we doing now that they're part of the city? You heard about the official plan. That's the first step. What is your plan for these lands? We've done that. The next step is you can't just then start throwing up homes, because you have to have two more things. You need a plan. How are you going to set up the roads and the schools and where they're going to be and how they're all going to fit in? That's called block planning. And that's happening right now as we speak, and that's being driven by the owners, the developers, and working with the cities. There's about 7 of those blocks in the north, and they work on creating a coherent, coordinated plan for their block so that it all fits and meets all the requirements of the official plan. Then there is, so you need to provide services, sewer, water. And that's a big issue, which is the city does that. And so if I can get a little bit technical, Ken, because I know some of the people here probably want to know. So what's happening with that, Kevin? Because we can't build out there until that's done. Well, there are some small parcels that can be built on the pipes that are already there. And it's primarily sewer that's the big expensive build. And there is in the east end, or what's called the Sabara lands, which as you come up Garden Avenue, make that big corner that you're getting on Linden Road and go due north, those are the Sabara lands. And then there's some areas around the Walter Gretzky Golf Course. There are some areas around there that can be serviced on existing pipe. But most of it needs new pipe. And that means pipe coming underneath the 403 at Oak Park Road, and then extension of pipes in the east around in the Linden Hills area. And down there, the MP Street pumping station, for those of you familiar, you got to increase it. And the MP Street pumping station, it takes the sewage that comes out of our northeast, and there's a hump before it gets down to the sewer treatment, the water treatment site down by our landfill site. And to get it over that hump, because it won't all flow by gravity, you need a pumping station to pump it over that little hump. It's not too far from the CN railway line. And so that we've upgraded that to its original capacity, and we're doing the environmental assessment applying to bump up the capacity of that pumping station to handle the sewage flowing out of the lands east of the wing of the King George Road area. And there's also a need for a new water tower out there to replace the water tower as well. That's just off the Highway 403. And so those are 3 big projects. MP Street, more pipes in the east, pipes in the west, a big water tower. And the next step in that is doing an environmental assessment. You can't do anything like that without an environmental assessment. We're well into that now, doing the environmental assessment. You'll be seeing requests for public input about that. And once that environmental assessment is done, we can then do the detailed planning and the build. Clearly something for the next council to deal with, but we're trying to lay the groundwork for the success of the next council in bringing those boundary lands on. I know I got a little technical on that, Ken, but I know some of the people here probably want to know that. Where are you going with it, and what stage is it at?
Excellent, thank you. Our region is targeted to receive significant population growth and is widely renowned in popularity rankings for places to live and invest. These opportunities include the ability for all in our region to benefit, including our neighboring First Nations. How are the communities of Brantford and Brant working with our Indigenous leaders to develop a regional economy in a mutually beneficial way? I think we had Mayor Bailey was first last time. Mayor Davis, I think.
Yeah, it's very important. And COVID has made that a bit complicated because the focus has been on COVID the last year and a half. But we do meet regularly with the staff of the Six Nations of the Grand River, in particular planning staff, the archaeological staff, environmental staff, and also the economic development departments. The goal is to do more with Six Nations that mutually benefits both communities. And there are significant land holdings that are within city boundaries that are part of the reserve, the glebe lands where the Woodland Cultural Center is. And so we've been working with those committees and those staff in Six Nations and some of the politicians. What can we do together that will be of mutual benefit? That key word, mutually benefit both. And unfortunately, much of that would then is likely going to focus around Mohawk Lake, the glebe lands, Woodland Cultural Center. I mean, those are the lands that where they have land holdings, and so do we. And so, but that has become a bit more complicated because, of course, what's happened to Mohawk Residential School, and I'm sure we all feel for the Indigenous members of our community what that history means to them and what it means to us as a community and a country. And I'm not going to go on about it. You know what I'm talking about. And so because we had a residential school here in our area, and as the survivors and Six Nations have formed a task force to determine what it is they want to do, both in terms of forensic investigation of the grounds and also in potential criminal investigation. So our role as a city is to try and support and assist that as much as we can. For example, we've decided to contribute another $100,000 to the Save the Evidence campaign to preserve that building. Where they've needed help through the summer, for example, there was an act of vandalism down at the Mohawk Residential School. We helped in terms of providing some security for it and also the Mohawk Chapel. We've also helped the Woodland Cultural Center. They've received a lot of requests, and we've seconded staff down there to assist them in that process. And moving forward, the forensic investigation is likely going to take several years. It'll likely call upon us to provide a center for the staff, that investigation to be located. So we're working with that task force in that sense. And also call upon demands of our own police service, which I can't speak to, but the chief has talked about it several times. So the focus right now is shifted and pivoted to what can we do to assist the Six Nations and the survivors group, which is, many of them are not from Six Nations, but from reserves and First Nations in Northern Ontario. What can we do as a city to assist them in that process? And so that's taking up a major focus for us at the city. But we realize that still life has to go on beyond that. And I find it very encouraging that we have a notification agreement with Grand River, Six Nations Grand River, which is notifying them of a development of projects might affect their interest. And so we're trying to refine and make that process better. For example, our planning staff yesterday sat down with the planning director from Six Nations to better understand their concerns in respect to what it is they're trying to achieve with their lands and what it is we might do to assist in that process. And so we're trying to arrive at a better day-to-day level of cooperation and collaboration for the benefit of both communities. And I think that's the same approach I suggest we take with the county, because if you do that, I think you can forge the beginnings of a relationship that has a different connotation to it, right? And will set us up for future success. And in terms of specific projects, there are specific projects we're looking at that we can work with Six Nations. I don't really want to get into them because to some degree they have to be put on hold because of the need to do a proper forensic investigation and supporting the survivors. So that's been the focus, Ken, and I think it's an appropriate focus for a community that has such a long history with the Six Nations of the Grand River, and I hope a very long and bright and prosperous future with them as well.
Thank you. Mayor Bailey, your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are very much like Mayor Davis's. If COVID did anything to us, it stopped a process that was going to be very effective. Mayor Davis and I had talked many times about having joint council meetings and including Six Nations. That was on the top of both our lists. we both thought it was very important. And then obviously through COVID and things, it didn't happen. Everything Kevin said about the residential home and all of that is obviously on the county's mind too. And because it is in Brantford, though, we are leaving that more to the city to let us know how they want us to fit into that piece, but obviously available to fit into that piece. But on the other side of the county is where our county actually crosses into Six Nation, the reserve proper twice. So we have to actually drive through the Six Nations to get to another part of our county twice when you go down by Onondaga and Middleport and beyond on the way to Caledonia. So we have to deal with every time there's a protest or a blockade or something, or whenever there's a kerfuffle that you may hear about in the news or see on TV. That has a lot to do with our farmers trying to turn into their driveways and things like that. So we have to be very, very careful how we choose to play the cards that we play on that part of the county, because we are more than two separate things. We are neighbors. We are neighbors to Six Nations in a literal sense, twice. So we the very last thing the County of Brant ever wants is to have another Caledonia, another standoff, another set of a situation that is not only dangerous, but not good for the day-to-day life of anyone involved or concerned. I watched Caledonia happen from a distance because a friend of mine happened to own the McDonald's in Caledonia and actually watched the effects it had on business and safety and the well-being of the people that live even around Caledonia. So I'm very aware of what that looked like, and I never want that for the county or for the city ever, because it's not only dangerous, but it's not good for your heart. It's just a place that takes you to a place of sadness, and it takes you to a place of you feel desperate. You don't have the answers that you need to know. So I'm very very aware of the relationship with Six Nations. We have a company here in the County of Brant, Brant Municipal Enterprises, which I chair, and the county is the main stakeholder. And we supply green energy to Six Nations. We have a very good relationship with Six Nations. We always have had in the County of Brant, because not that the city doesn't share the river also, but we share the river at a different level, I believe, in the County of Brant, because so many of the farmers back the river. And then, as I said, Six Nations crosses over it twice. So they're neighbors, and they share the same river, the same lifestyle, the same values. And so we're working very hard with green energy, and we have a lot of things again on the go. COVID has slowed down a few of our principal projects, but they're not dead by a long shot. And as soon as we can get together and meet, it will be more effective. We're taking also a little bit of less formal approach to Six Nations, because we feel that's where the value of our relationship is. We shouldn't be talking about contracts as much, and we should be visiting face to face. We need to do that. People have to see trust. That's what COVID has taken from people, I believe, is we have to see each other. We have to read each other's faces, and we have to know what's going on in the room before we can actually understand how people are feeling and how people are thinking. So I know that as soon as COVID opens up a little bit for us, and the county can meet again with Six Nations, and obviously the next council of the city will also be part of that, because it's very important that the three of us get along and cooperate and understand what we can do for each other, because they lack things that we have, and we want access to things that they are. We need to tell the truth. We need to understand the history, and we need to be able to say we're sorry. And I think all that happens when we can look people in the eye. Thank you.
Thank you. Now this is our lightning round. One question. You each have 1 year left in your term, you and your councils. What are the one or two top priorities that you would like to achieve in this last year? And we'll start with you, Mayor Bailey.
Well, first of all, I'd like to believe it's not my last year, so we'll just talk about this hypothetically. And I just before we begin, does this screen make me look big? I can't see anything, and I would hate to think that it added another 20 pounds when I don't need another 20 pounds. I think probably the thing we have to do before the end of this term is to finish things. We have some very big things going on in the County of Brant. A new library, a head library proposed for Paris, which is going to be very exciting. We have all kinds of building, the Canesville Community Center. There are a lot of builds going to be happening. That will be the completion of our health hub, which is going to be wonderful. The Cowan Health Hub in Paris. Hospital, whatever's going to happen to the hospital, we've got to get that cleared up and on the go. We really do have to take care of our seniors. We have to have a plan. We're working on a plan right now, part of our official plan, which has already been, as I said, submitted to the province. But we really have to get a few things done that we said we would do. We didn't blame. We sort of blamed the last council for all the growth in Paris. And the next council is going to take more charge of what's going to happen in St. George and the new growth in the County of Brant. So we have to really participate in the infrastructure, know that we're doing it properly, get ready for the next 30, I don't know how many houses in St. George, I think 3,700 houses in St. George. We've got to get that done right because all those other decisions were made by other people. And although we had to see it through to fruition, the next bunch of houses, the next piece of infrastructure, the next way the county looks will be on the next council, and this council has to set that council up so they won't be disappointed. So just seeing things through will take up the biggest part of the coming year. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Davis.
Yeah, so this is what's coming, Mayor Davis. And I'll tell you this, what's coming I think is extremely exciting, and the reason why is because I've got a tremendous council that I work with. And many councils, I think Mayor Beatty referred to a prior council that they have in the county. Our goal is, so the next council will say, I'm really glad I followed that council, because this council has been very forward-looking in terms of its planning and aspirations. We spent a year ago, better part of a Saturday, with senior staff and a consultant that helped us develop 9 key priorities for not just this council and the finish of this council, but what we need to put in place to ensure the success of the next council and the councils after that by dealing and grappling with the issues that our city has and the opportunities we have and how to capitalize on those. So that's what's exciting for me. I know it's exciting for our council. How do we plan for that? Not just the immediate political decisions, but how do we make for a better city, knowing that there's only so much one council can do. So much of what we're doing is setting the groundwork for the success of the next council, assuming the next council sees the priorities kind of the same way, but I'm sure they'll see many of them the same way. So, but in terms of specifics, because I'm sure you're thinking, well, Mayor Davis, that's fine, but tell me exactly what is that? And what is it you hope to focus on over the next year? Well, obviously those boundary lands I was telling you about and making sure that the infrastructure plan, most of which will be built by the next council, but that we have the road path for them to do that, the environmental assessments, et cetera. In terms of next big priority is obviously the downtown. Downtown's the heart of our city. This council, we've set up a downtown task force, and it's currently meeting. We have a number of representatives, Chamber being one of them, from people and groups that have an interest in our downtown and making our downtown even much healthier. And so we're about to begin a public consultation process on 3 areas. How do we make the downtown safer and more secure? How do we better promote and develop the downtown for various reasons? And how do we help those, some of whom are in our downtown, that need more and better help? And so those 3 areas will be very much focus of this council, and I'm glad to tell you the leader of that task force is here with us, Councillor McCreary, who's leading the task force. Obviously, as mayor, I sit on it, and many of you in this room also sit on it as well. Big task in front of us. We want to come up with an action plan, and an action plan hopefully before the end of the year that may be a bit optimistic, but certainly early in the new year to set the next stage for our downtown. And so what is that going to kind of look like? I'm not going to prejudge, but I'll tell you some things that you're going to see downtown. One, something that council's working on that's not directly part of the task force, it's the Colburn Street Point lands. That is north of the Y on Colburn Street. Those lands have been sitting vacant. They're the keystone property in the downtown. It's the western entrance to our downtown. We're currently looking, staff are looking at it right now. How do we best develop that? Whom do we develop it with? And what's the concept? And the concept, better serve our community and it better improve our downtown, or we're not interested. So that's very exciting to me. We're also the boring subject of pipes, sewers, water. Downtown, if you want to have a denser downtown, those ancient pipes under Colburn and Lizzie Street have to be replaced. And that's why we're doing that environmental assessment. It's not just a streetscape. It's not just about how do we change the road and the appearance, the sidewalks, et cetera, downtown to make it better. But the main purpose of all that is to replace those pipes, setting the groundwork for the type of future development our downtown is going to need to succeed. Because our current ancient system down there in the ground, pipes aren't going to support that. So that's a big part of what this council is doing. It'll be the next council that builds it, but we plan it and we get the environmental assessment done for them. The other thing obviously is downtown security, a big issue for our community and for this council, this mayor and many councillors, especially Ward 5 and Ward 2 and Ward 4 councillors. So part of that private security initiative City Council did a year ago as part of that. And what I'm hoping moving forward is we'll see a better degree of coordination between the city's security, which is primarily directed to about the 30 properties the city has downtown and making sure they're safe, but also working very cooperatively with Laurie's security, and also, of course, our police services. And our police services faces a number of challenges given the changing nature of crime in our community. And we expect to see coming forward a proposal for a special constable beat patrol in the downtown that'll also be part of that making our downtown safer. Not to mention security cameras. We're also looking at that in our downtown. So a big priority for this council will be working in respect to our downtown, making it safer, more attractive, and more economically viable. We've also created a kind of a grant program that will, I mentioned before, this tax increment program for those that buy property and put up residential buildings. You get a break in your taxes. And much of that's focused in the downtown to make the downtown more viable. Some interesting projects, big capital projects. We can, if not complete this term of council, but we'll have well underway. The Brant River crossing bridges. So we have a plan now. The old bridge, the one that's further south on the river that's currently open, fixing the wooding decking, but realizing it's the end of its life expectancy, 10 years, it's probably going to have to be taken down. And the Brant Crossing Bridge is that lovely bridge next to the Lorne. We hope it'll be open by next spring with some minor repairs. The eventual goal, the plan for this council, we hope will be implemented by next council, is replace it with a structure that is designed for pedestrian and bicycle traffic. And of course, taking care of the Lorne Bridge, a critical lifeline. Also, we see some park projects, making significant progress, if not completing projects like the Airedale Park, Dufferin Park, community center in the southwest. They won't necessarily be completed, but we want to make very significant progress on those important projects. Even something as like a new police station. A police station is, our force is twice the size of what it was when that building was built. And they can't provide the service we need in that building. So that's a big part of what's happening in the next year, which is planning for that new police station. Housing is it's been an important issue for this council. It's an issue that past councils, for whatever reason, didn't really grapple with because they had other priorities, but it could no longer be pushed off because housing is a municipal responsibility. You can't just say, well, when the federal government gives us some money, we'll do something. That answer which was of many councils in many parts of the province, was no longer cut the ice. It didn't do it. So this council, the great council I'm working with, decided, no, we're going to deal with this. Since we have a housing plan that we're going to see some real concrete action on this coming year. 18 stints on using ANC, a local modular manufacturer, 4 units. That's about to open soon. A build on Colburn Street West. And I should also mention we're doing this in association with the county, because the County of Brant and us do this kind of housing together. And there's a project on Colburn Street West, kind of where the corner is. And that's going to be an ANC modular build using a great local manufacturer to create housing quickly and cheaply. And that'll be about 20 units. Working with the county, there's a property in Paris called Trillium Way. We're hoping that'll be the next affordable housing project. And then beyond that, there's a plan for about a 200 unit plus build on Shellard Lane using monies from the sale of the Arrowdale lands. So that's very exciting. The housing is an important part of this. Also traffic safety. We're moving forward the red light cameras. We want to set the groundwork for speed control cameras. It's a complicated system really overseen by the City of Toronto. They're not taking any more municipalities that want speed control cameras, but they will. We want to make sure we're ready, which would likely be the next council, to take advantage of that when it becomes available to help control traffic in our community. Another important project that's being led by Councillor McCurry, I keep saying Councillor McCurry, he's a great fellow councillor, is beginning the work on a museum hub. Our museums in our community, and this council is not going to solve that, but it's beginning to plan for it. And then, of course, a small performing arts center, very hard for a municipality to do in addition to Sanders Center, but we're doing a great partnership with Laurier to use the old theater cinemas for that purpose. So I hope you hear the excitement rising in my voice that, what's being done or going to be done by this council once we've finally been released from the shackles of this COVID pandemic, which we hope is very shortly, you're going to see some great things happening over the next year. But even more importantly, we're setting the stage for future councils, no matter who the mayor is and who the councillors are, to be able to be successful and for them to say, this will be my badge of honor will be when some subsequent mayor or councillor says, I sure am glad we followed that council that was in place until from 2019 to 2021. Then I'll know, job well done. And I feel confident that'll be the case.
Thank you. Sounds like there's some excitement coming from both communities, so good to hear. The Chamber has always appreciated the close relationship we've had with the leadership teams at both the county and the City of Brantford, and we look forward to further developing these relationships over the coming years. Also want to just say how much we appreciate the opportunity to sit down and talk with both of you in a forum like this, especially now that we're doing it almost live. So we do appreciate that, and we appreciate taking the time from your busy schedules. Now, looking at Dave, do we have time for any questions, Dave, or are we near the end? We're near the end. So,
I'll be here for a while if you have any questions.
Of course, today could not have been possible without the generous support of our sponsor, Enbridge. So on behalf of all of us here today, thank you very much. And I would like to ask Murray to come forward again and draw the ticket for our door prize, which is 6 Yeti Rambler 20-ounce coffee mugs. They're donated by Murray at Enbridge. So hold on one second. Thank you. And the winner is Joy O'Donnell, which... Okay. To wrap up, I'd like to thank very much Pink's Productions for coordinating the event, providing all the technology and the support for us today. This video production will be available on all of the Chamber of Commerce website and social media sites probably over the next couple of days. And thank you very much to the Best Western and all of their very accommodating staff for assisting us and making lunch what it was. Thank you very much. It is great to be back in person, and have a fantastic long weekend. Thank you.